You're in a meeting, and someone says, that deadline slipped because you didn't follow up. The room goes quiet. You feel heat rise into your face. You know that's not accurate. You open your mouth to defend yourself, and your tone sharpens before you even hear it. You hate admitting that when you try to defend yourself, your voice tightens and you sound angrier than you intend. Here's the interruption you can use today, exactly as written, that's not how I see it. Here's what happened. Say it once, slowly. Don't stack explanations. In the next 10 minutes, something changes. Your breathing steadies. The conversation becomes about facts instead of tone. You feel less hijacked. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, financial, or legal advice. This won't eliminate tension, but it will keep you from escalating it. The pain here isn't that you're wrong. It's that when you're right, you still lose the room because your defense sounds like an attack. You're trying to set the record straight, but the emotion bleeds into the delivery. This is costing you credibility at work and closeness in relationships. People remember how you sounded more than what you said. What makes this moment hard is speed. Accusations or misunderstandings hit fast. Your nervous system spikes. You move into defense mode before you've chosen your words. The sharper the misunderstanding, the sharper your voice. And once tone escalates, content gets ignored. By the end of this lesson, you won't become passive. You won't swallow inaccuracies. You'll learn how to speak clearly using a simple two-part sentence that stabilizes your tone. You'll reduce workplace tension and defensiveness at home. And you'll feel confident without needing to get louder. If you've ever walked away thinking, I was right, but I shouldn't have said it like that, this is built for that moment. Subscribe for more lessons that help you stay steady under pressure. First, you'll understand why your tone spikes when you defend yourself and how to slow it down without backing down. Next, you'll apply a two-part sentence structure that keeps emotion from bleeding into explanation. Then, you'll see how to handle pushback without stacking justifications. Finally, you'll watch this play out in a real setting where you're tempted to fire back, but don't. There's a moment later where someone challenges you again, and the old reflex to sharpen your voice appears instantly. When it does, you'll have something solid to lean on, something that protects your credibility without sacrificing your clarity. You're on a Zoom call with your manager and two teammates. A project update is being reviewed. Someone says, we didn't hear back from the client because the follow-up wasn't sent. All eyes shift to you. Your chest tightens. You know you sent it. You even remember the timestamp. You jump in quickly, I did send it. I don't know why you're saying that. I always follow up. Even as the words leave your mouth, you can hear the edge in your tone. It sounds defensive. Slightly irritated. The content is correct, but the delivery creates tension. Here's the first correction. Use this two-part sentence exactly as written, that's not how I see it. Here's what happened. Then stop for half a second. Continue with one factual explanation. This works because it separates emotion from information. The first part calmly signals disagreement without attacking. The second part shifts the focus to facts instead of feelings. Let's replay the scenario using the structure. Your teammate says, the follow-up wasn't sent. You respond, evenly, that's not how I see it. Here's what happened. I sent the follow-up Tuesday at 2:17 p.m. and copied the team. No sarcasm. No over-explaining. No personal jabs. Why this works is simple. When you defend yourself without structure, your brain floods with urgency. You try to correct everything at once. You stack reasons. You add tone. The other person hears emotional resistance instead of clarity. The two-part sentence slows the moment down. Picture a common North American setting outside of work. You're at home. Your partner says, you never help with the dishes anymore. The word never triggers you instantly. It feels unfair. Old reaction, that's not true. I did them twice last week. Why do you always exaggerate? New structure, that's not how I see it. Here's what happened. I handled dishes Monday and Thursday. Notice the difference. The second response doesn't accuse. It doesn't escalate. It is correct. A common mistake here is softening the first part too much. Saying, maybe I'm wrong, but weakens the boundary. Another mistake is turning the second part into a lecture. The goal is concise clarity, not courtroom defense. Here's the tiny action you can take today. Practice the two-part sentence out loud once. Say it neutrally. Either you practiced it or you didn't. Now a brief slow practice. Imagine someone misrepresenting your action. Feel the initial surge. Instead of speaking immediately, inhale once. Then say the first sentence calmly. Pause. Deliver one clear fact. Notice how that pacing reduces emotional spillover. There's also a psychological layer here. When someone challenges your competence or integrity, your identity feels threatened. The spike in tone isn't about the specific accusation, it's about protecting your image. The structure protects your image without escalating conflict. Another mistake is trying to win the entire debate in one response. You don't need to. You need to correct the record calmly. If more discussion follows, you can continue using steady sentences. But don't sprint emotionally. Why this matters later is because misunderstandings rarely disappear on their own. If you stay silent to avoid sounding angry, resentment builds. If you fire back sharply, tension builds. Calm correction sits in the middle. You're not surrendering. You're not attacking. You're anchoring. Notice the shift. Instead of reacting from adrenaline, you respond from intention. Instead of stacking emotional language, you use structure. There's another layer coming. Sometimes the issue isn't a factual mistake, it's an accusation wrapped in tone. Someone implies carelessness or laziness. That hits deeper. The urge to defend becomes stronger. That's where the second tool comes in, one that protects your credibility even when the criticism feels personal. You're at a team check-in. The atmosphere is already tense. Deadlines are tight. Your supervisor says, "We need more attention to detail on this account." Then they glance in your direction. Not explicitly blaming you, but implying it. You feel it immediately. That subtle sting. You know the work was solid. You double-checked it. But the implication lingers in the air. The old mistake here is over-defending. You jump in fast. You explain every step you took. You start listing processes. Your voice speeds up. You're not yelling, but your urgency makes it sound like you're fighting. Even if your content is strong, your tone suggests insecurity. Here's the correction. Use this line exactly as written. If there's something specific you'd like adjusted, I'm open to hearing it. Notice what this does. It doesn't matter. It doesn't counterattack. It redirects the conversation to clarity. Why this works is subtle. When criticism is vague, your brain fills in the blanks with threat. You imagine worst-case interpretations. You defend against everything at once. But vague criticism collapses when asked to become specific. Let's replay it. Supervisor, we need more attention to detail. You, if there's something specific you'd like adjusted, I'm open to hearing it. Calm. Direct. Steady. Now the pressure shifts back to the source. Either they name something concrete, or they soften the tone. This prevents two problems at once. First, you don't escalate emotionally. Second, you don't absorb undefined blame. A common mistake here is adding an edge to the sentence. If you say it with sarcasm, "Oh, what exactly did I mess up?" the structure collapses. Tone matters more than words. Another mistake is stacking justification before asking for clarity. Don't start with, "I already triple-checked everything," lead with calm openness. That shows confidence instead of defensiveness. Picture a familiar North American relationship setting. You're at home. Someone says, "You've been distracted lately." That lands hard. It feels like a character critique. Old reaction, I've been working nonstop. You don't see everything I'm juggling. New structure, if there's something specific you're noticing, I'm open to hearing it. That shifts the discussion from identity to behavior. From attack to adjustment. Here's the tiny action you can take today. Write that sentence down and keep it visible for the next week. The first time you hear vague criticism, use it once. Just once. Now pause for a brief pattern interrupt. Inhale slowly. Ask yourself, am I defending my identity or clarifying a behavior? That distinction changes everything. Why this works psychologically is important. Vague criticism threatens identity. Specific feedback addresses behavior. When you invite specificity, you separate who you are from what happened. There's another layer here. Sometimes when you defend yourself too aggressively, it confirms the other person's narrative. They think, why are they so reactive? Calm redirection undermines that assumption. And here's something crucial, being open to specifics doesn't mean admitting guilt. It means you're confident enough not to flinch. If there is something valid, you'll hear it calmly. If there isn't, the vagueness will fade under light. You're building steadiness. First, you corrected factual inaccuracies with a two-part sentence. Now you're handling implied criticism without emotional leakage. There's one more pressure test coming. What happens when someone doubles down? When they insist you're wrong, even after you clarify? That's when adrenaline spikes hardest. That's when your voice wants to rise. That's where you'll need one final adjustment, one that protects your credibility without turning the moment into a contest. There's a belief that traps you the moment someone doubles down against you. If you don't push harder, you'll lose. It feels logical. If they insist you're wrong, you must insist louder that you're right. If they raise their tone, you match it. If they repeat their point, you counter with more force. But here's the myth to drop. Intensity does not equal authority. When someone insists, no, that's not what happened, even after you've clarified, your nervous system surges. Your heart rate ticks up. Your voice wants to sharpen. You feel an urge to prove. The cost of chasing proof emotionally is credibility. The more you push with heat, the more the conversation becomes about your tone instead of the facts. Here's the instructions. Use this line exactly as written. We may see this differently. Here's what I can confirm. Then state one clear fact. Stop there. No stacking. No repeating. No emotional coloring. This works because it shifts the dynamic from debate to position. You're not trying to convert them. You're stating your ground calmly. When you stop trying to win the emotional exchange, the temperature drops. Picture a common workplace moment in the US or Canada. You're in a meeting. A colleague says, you missed that update. You've already explained you sent it. They respond, I never saw it. Old instinct, well, that's not my fault. I sent it. I can't control whether you read your email. That escalates instantly. New structure, we may see this differently. Here's what I can confirm. The update was sent Tuesday afternoon and included in the shared folder. Then silence. Notice the power of stopping. You're not filling the space with defensive energy. You're letting the fact stand. Another example at home. A partner says, you never listen. You clarify one example where you did. They double down, that's not enough. Old reaction, I'm always listening. You're exaggerating. New response, we may see this differently. Here's what I can confirm. I made time Sunday night to talk through everything. You're not dismissing their feelings. You're not attacking. You're anchoring. A common mistake here is adding subtle sarcasm. Tone must remain neutral. If your delivery carries a hidden edge, the sentence loses its stabilizing effect. Another mistake is trying to secure agreement immediately. The goal is not instant resolution. The goal is emotional containment. Why this works psychologically is important. When someone doubles down, it triggers your need for validation. You want them to acknowledge you're right. But chasing acknowledgement increases friction. Stating what you can confirm maintains dignity without demanding concession. Here's the tiny action for today. Practice that sentence once out loud. Feel how it slows your cadence. Either you practiced it or you didn't. Now a brief slow practice. Imagine someone insisting you're wrong. Feel the urge to interrupt. Instead, picture yourself inhaling once and saying, "We may see this differently. Here's what I can confirm." Notice how that steadies your posture internally. There's something else happening in these moments. When you push emotionally, you subconsciously signal insecurity. When you anchor calmly, you signal confidence. Confidence doesn't need volume. And here's the deeper shift. You're no longer trying to control their perception. You're controlling your delivery. You cannot force agreement. You can maintain composure. Over time, that composure becomes your reputation. People learn that when you speak, you're steady. You don't flare. You don't fold. You clarify. This matters because high-stakes environments test emotional control repeatedly. Promotions, performance reviews, financial decisions, relationship conflicts. The person who remains calm while correcting the record often carries more weight than the person who argues the loudest. There's a scenario coming where all three tools intersect: factual correction, redirecting vague criticism, and anchoring under insistence. In that moment, your old reflex to escalate will feel justified. But you'll choose steadiness instead. And that choice changes how the room reads you. You're in a quarterly performance review with your manager. The room is small. The air feels tight. You've prepared your notes, your metrics, and your updates. You expect a direct conversation. Halfway through, your manager says, "There were a few moments this quarter where communication slipped." That created confusion for the team. Your stomach drops. You know exactly what they're referencing. One project had a delay, but you sent the update. You remember the timestamp. You remember the follow-up message. You feel heat rise into your neck. The old reaction starts forming before you're aware of it. That's not accurate. I said everything. I can't control whether people read their email. Your tone almost sharpens. You catch it. You remember the first tool. That's not how I see it. Here's what happened, you say evenly. I sent the project update on March 14th and followed up 2 days later. You stop there. Your manager nods slightly but replies, "Well, the team still felt out of the loop." There it is. The doubling down. Your pulse ticks up again. The urge to argue intensifies. You want to prove the timeline. You want to show the receipts. You want acknowledgement. The old pattern pushes hard now. Instead, you shift to the second tool. If there's something specific you'd like adjusted, I'm open to hearing it, you say calmly. The room pauses. Your manager thinks for a moment. Maybe adding a summary in Slack in addition to email would help. Now the conversation moves from accusation to adjustment. You nod. That's helpful. I can add that. But then your manager adds, "It just felt inconsistent at times." It's vague again. Emotional. Hard to pin down. You feel the flicker of defensiveness rising. You want to say, inconsistent compared to what? You slow down. "We may see this differently," you say, steady. Here's what I can confirm. Every scheduled update was sent before the deadline. Silence. Not tense silence. Just space. Your manager exhales slightly. That's fair. Maybe we just need tighter alignment on expectations. Something subtle shifts. You didn't escalate. You didn't collapse. You didn't overshare data. You didn't attack. You stayed grounded. The meeting continues. It's not perfect. There are still points of feedback. There are still areas for improvement. But the tone remains even. You're no longer fighting to defend your identity. Driving home afterward, you scan the conversation. You didn't leave with that familiar regret of, I sounded defensive. You didn't reply your tone in your head. You also didn't leave feeling steamrolled. You corrected the record calmly. You invited specifics. You anchored under insistence. The issue wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about how you carried yourself while clarifying. You noticed something else. Your breathing stayed steadier than in past reviews. Your shoulders didn't tense as much. Your voice didn't spike. That physical steadiness changes perception. Your manager didn't backtrack dramatically. There was no big apology. But the conversation remained constructive instead of combative. And that's the win. You realize something important. When you used to defend yourself aggressively, even if you were correct, the aftermath felt messy. People remembered the energy. Now, they remember the clarity. The pattern hasn't vanished. There will be future meetings. Future misunderstandings. Future moments where someone questions your performance or intent. But you now have a structure to lean on when adrenaline spikes. You're not relying on willpower. You're relying on language. And language, when structured correctly, stabilizes emotion. You didn't dominate the conversation. You didn't silence criticism. You didn't prove yourself flawless. You stayed calm while setting the record straight. And that changes how you walk into the next room. Not louder. Just steadier. When someone challenges you, your first instinct is usually to react. Your tone rises. Your words speed up. You try to correct everything at once. That reaction feels protective, but it often costs you credibility. Responding is different. Responding is intentional. It slows the moment down. It separates emotion from information. Reacting sounds heated. Responding sounds grounded. One scatters the room. The other steadies it. First, you interrupted the emotional spike with a two-part sentence that separated disagreement from explanation. Instead of defending your identity, you clarified the facts. Then you redirected vague criticism into something specific, shifting the focus from implied blame to actionable feedback. Next, you learned how to anchor when someone doubled down, stating what you could confirm without escalating or chasing validation. Finally, you saw how those tools work together in a real performance review, where the old instinct to push harder almost took over, but composure carried the conversation instead. The core lesson is this: setting the record straight doesn't require volume. It requires structure. You don't need to win the emotional exchange. You need to remain steady inside it. Now let's lock this into action with 3 concrete steps you can take today. First, memorize the two-part sentence, "That's not how I see it." Here's what happened. Say it out loud 3 times today in a neutral tone. You're training your nervous system to slow down before adrenaline takes over. If you rehearse it calmly, you'll access it faster under pressure. Second, write down this redirect line somewhere visible for the next week. If there's something specific you'd like adjusted, I'm open to hearing it. The next time criticism feels vague or implied, use it once. Not twice. Not repeatedly. Once. Let clarity do the work. Third, practice stopping after one fact. When you explain yourself, give one clear confirmation and then pause. No stacking. No over-justifying. Notice how silence can carry authority when you let it. If you want to deepen this skill, the next layer isn't about defending yourself, it's about handling direct confrontation without emotional escalation. A natural follow-up would be something like emotional control, staying calm when someone tries to intimidate you, because clarity becomes even more important when pressure intensifies. Remember this clearly. You cannot control how others interpret your words. You cannot guarantee agreement. But you can control the steadiness of your delivery. When you stop trying to force acknowledgement and start anchoring calmly, your presence changes. People may not agree immediately, but they'll feel the difference. And more importantly, you will feel the difference. You'll leave conversations without replaying your tone in your head. You'll stop second-guessing whether you sounded angry. You'll feel cleaner internally because your words matched your intention. That internal alignment builds confidence over time. Not loud confidence. Stable confidence. There will still be difficult moments. There will still be unfair comments. But instead of reacting from adrenaline, you'll respond from structure. And structure is stronger than emotion. If you want to continue building this kind of emotional control, where you stay composed, clear, and confident even when challenged, subscribe and keep strengthening this skill with me.